Hello. Welcome to another episode of Leadership Synergized, where we provide guests who have been there, done that, and want to bring their advice and an opportunity to pay it forward, as well as their experiences. I believe you're going to find a lot of value in today's guest, my good friend, Coach and Dr. Andy Owen. Coach, thank you for the bottom of my heart for taking time. I know you're on spring break as an educator, and that's usually a time to decompress. So we really appreciate you taking this next 20 minutes or so to talk to us.
I'm really excited about this opportunity, Dr. Smith. Love what you're doing with your episodes and the podcast, and very entertaining, and a lot of knowledge is gained, hopefully, for everyone. And maybe I'm just able to add to this opportunity for people this morning.
Coach Owen, he may not recall this, but when he was playing high school football, actually in Evansville, playing for his dad, and I was one of the officials. We go back a number of years in that regard, but I've had much respect for Coach Owen, and you're going to find what a tremendous legacy of a family of serving. And Coach Owen, we're going to get a chance to get into that, but what an outstanding career and role that you've had in a number of facets, from athletics to education. Now you're in district administration. Why don't you introduce yourself and profile Andy Owen, the educator, the leader, and the family person?
I think, first of all, just talking about the education part of me, I K through 12, I'm an EVSC product. I always say the Evansville Vanderburgh School Corporation has been great to me. Any success I've had has probably been because of that. And they're able to come back after college and be a part of that. But as far as the pathway, growing up as the son of two educators, my mother was a teacher. My father was a teacher. We have a grandparents. Both my grandparents were teachers. So we had Bossy High School with one of my grandfathers. We had Evansville Wrights High School with my grandmother. My mother actually taught at Central High School as well as my father. My mother got out of teaching when she took care of the children early. There was a legacy of educators, and to see the joy growing up that they had in this profession and how meaningful it could be with that was the choice for me. Obviously, just seeing the difference they could make, the influence they had on all people. And when I say that, it could be the lawyer in Evansville to the person that's very less fortunate here, but just seeing the same type of admiration and relationship with their former students, just that was the path for me. Went to University of Indianapolis and got interested at the time in special education. I've always thought that was a neat content area where, again, anything for me has always been about the power of influence and the ability to change and help and advocate for others. Became very passionate about special education, became one of my majors along with PE and health. I knew if I wanted to coach that I think to be successful, you need to be with all the athletes and have some relationships there. So I went into special education and general education, PE and health. I was fortunate out of college to be able to come back and work at Evansville Central as a special education teacher. My dad didn't have a coaching position for me. I remember the school didn't have many, so I started off as a volunteer coach just about in every sport. My first hired extracurricular was the equipment man. I've never even carried a tool, don't know how to fix much, but learned very quickly how to. And again, it was just an opportunity for me. And I didn't come back to a lot of opportunities, coaching or paid positions. But I think that in the long run probably was a really good thing, just to be able to earn your stripes a little bit back at your alma mater and volunteer. And then at the school, it's been great to me. I started as a special education teacher. I was fortunate enough to work along my father, who's passed away now. Looking back, it was just meant to be with him every day and to coach my younger brother at a time where he and his friends growing up. It was probably one of the best times of my life. And looking back, it was meant to be. Headed back to Central, coach with him. He retired. I was able to be the head football coach. Not always something that works out well, following in a father's footsteps, but did the best I could. And again, we had a great experience there. Was honored enough to be an athletic director at the school while I was coaching. So not only was I leading the football program, but was working towards culture and climate in the entire school. Fantastic memories, relationships with all athletes and their families. And I think as an athletic director, you're not only working with the athletes. Athletics can be such a big part of the school besides just the athletes, just the student experience, even if they're not an athlete, such a big part of the school. And we were able to do some great things there. I had a good team, and opportunity arrived in district development, and I jumped at that as an opportunity to be the district athletic director. And I'm very fortunate there. Met a great superintendent, worked for Dr. Smith, was very influenced by his leadership and decided to follow in his footsteps and go get a superintendent's license and EDS. Met great people at Oakland City University that relationships still last now. And now I'm sitting assistant superintendent in the city of Evansville, 23,000 students, 40 schools. Goes back to wanting to be a special ed teacher and the power of influence and just meaningful relationships. And now I'm just being able to do it on a grander scale and very blessed. In between all of that, I have children. I have a daughter, Annabelle, a daughter, Olivia, and a son, Griffin. I had a daughter, Ava, that passed away, and it was at 7 months. My wife, Courtney, has been my high school sweetheart, and we've been married for over 20 years and very blessed at home too. And education is great, but you got to make sure you're taking care of your house and your home and your family because nothing's more important than that.
Coach, what a wonderful career. And you talk about Evansville Vanderburgh School Corporation. I think you said 40 schools, 23,000 students. The superintendent is Dr. David Smith. He's been there a number of years. As you look at your role now and as part of the district leadership team, what are some aspects that you've learned a bit that maybe are a bit of an aha, that are challenges, but they're challenges that kind of maybe start out with a little bit of how do we move forward, yet on the other side, there's so much great opportunity.
The challenges, I'd always start with budget. And I don't think sometimes as a teacher or just you're so worried about your classroom and your students, you might not really understand that. And what's mandated, they want you to take these tests, but they might not have given you the budget to create how to support teachers and preparing students for the test. So there's a lot of mandated things throughout the state and actually national level where they mandate things, but these things aren't funded for. And I think the budget and the financial problems that sometimes that arise at a district level that people aren't aware of. I think that would be number one. And then number two, I think in education, and you lose as you try to, as I talked about earlier, is number one thing's always got to be your family. Obviously, you're going to care as much for your students, but your family. And as you try to work to prepare and provide for a family and education, it's really silly that as you become further away from students is your opportunity to make more money. The classroom teacher, but then I left the classroom and I went into the administration as the athletic office. My salary increased, but my touch point with students, I had to make sure and work really hard to maintain that I still had that. We all got into education for the profession to work with students. And in education, as I even left the school building and go to a district level where my salary might help. And obviously my work does become a lot more and what I'm in charge of and those type of things. But still that interaction with that student is less. And I think as we pull really good teachers out because their opportunity to be able to provide better for their family, a lot of people would love to stay where they are with a little bit more financial incentive and could lead that building just as much and as well. And I think that's a challenge that I'd somehow like to try to figure out someday because education is a great profession. But like I said, I think it's a little weird that you're leaving the contact with the students as you begin to gain more money within the system.
That's an interesting view and point, Coach. And it has me reflecting back on my past and a mentor and an individual very near and dear to my heart who passed away in the past 12 months. I recall that very similar aspect, being a frontline supervisor in manufacturing, you're there directly with those 30, 40, 50 individuals every day. Then you take that next step, you become a bit separated from those individuals. But as he told me, it's more of an opportunity to influence them through influencing other leaders. And what I'm hearing you say is those opportunities, they do seem a bit backwards, right? Because people like you and I and others who are in leadership, we love the contact, it's relationship, it's connecting, it's working alongside in education, those children. But to your point, as you've experienced, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, each step you've taken, you've moved farther geographically away from the opportunities to contact those students. It provides more of a challenge to be able to create that influence, those individuals whom you do work with, those other educators who are in other leadership roles in that piece. What's maybe one thing you would be willing to share that has worked for you, but maybe it's taken a few lessons learned to get to the point in that aspect?
I think you're right. The responsibilities that I do want to make sure that I explain that well. You're right. The responsibilities and the power of influence, that's the reason you leave, is because you are going to have influence instead of one school in the EVSC and leading that district, leading that school. Now, as a district leader, I'm in charge, and the power of influence hopefully is going to influence, hopefully, my beliefs, my culture and climate that we want to have with students is going to go. I think probably one of the most difficult challenges I've had, I'll probably go to the athletic part of it. And when I was a district athletic director or a specific school athletic director, I dealt with only our culture and climate at Central High School. And it really, I worked for the EVSC, but I was not too concerned about Wrights, Bossy, Harrison, or North. I wanted to see Central student athletes have the best experience. I didn't tell any family that they were going to win the most games. I didn't promise championships. Those were goals, but that wasn't our purpose. Our purpose was, if you played in an athletic team in arts, you were going to have the best experience. That was something that was our kind of our brand, our vision. It was all about the experience and how meaningful and how better you would be prepared. But as I took over the district, taking 5 schools that are all so different, each needs and wants are a little bit different. Each student body's demographic is a little bit different. Each financial support is a little bit different. It took me a while to realize what's best for each school on an individual basis, rather than each school needs a turf field or each school needs to work on an extra CV for transportation after school. Just because I think in the past in EVSC, it was one size fits all, maybe in the athletic world, that if this school needed it, well, we were going to take 6 years and we were going to get them to all 5 schools. And at the completion of that, then we'd start over with a new initiative. Now, not everybody's needs and wants are the same. I think our team has a better understanding of that, and we're trying to fit the needs and wants of each individual school. And that would be a challenge that it maybe took me a little while to figure out. But I think after we did, I think we're better servicing the needs of our student athletes and their families.
Coach, you had mentioned that you work with some outstanding people in the Evansville Vandenberg School Corporation. Dr. David Smith, highly respected, thought of. Dr. Carl Underwood, another assistant superintendent in the district office aspect. Talk a bit about how you all are able in such a large school corporation, school district, to collaborate, strategically plan, and then focus and follow through on the execution piece.
Communication. I don't think the education, the business world, there's incredible similarities between. And I think both the business could learn from education, and education has learned a lot from the business on how to. We are a small bit. We're not even a small business. We're a large enterprise in Southern Indiana, and communication would be the most important thing. Knowing what's going on, being held accountable, and getting done what's being asked to get done. One of the things I'm very fortunate to be a part of is the executive leadership team with the Evansville Vandenberg School Corporation. Probably 10 or 12 of us within the EVSC, meeting every Wednesday with an agenda, with work to get done on topic. It's probably the most part of my week every week, where not only is accountability there, but opportunity and challenges for what's best for students. And Dr. Smith leads that, but the ability to communicate in there on the same level. We all know who our leader is, but his willingness to listen is second to none as a leader. I've always valued that. And I think it has a lot to do, it goes back to being the assistant basketball coach, going back to my volunteer. When I told you I couldn't get a job at Central, but I sure did volunteer at everything my first year. As a basketball coach, just sitting next to the coach, and you throw things out in the middle of the game. We need a 2-3, or maybe man him, or the little suggestions. And the head coach might listen sometimes and he might not. But I think the assistant coach that continues to throw ideas out and not pout and get their feelings hurt when the head coach didn't do what you asked, I think it goes back to that, and the ability to speak up, challenge. And I don't have all the answers, but I do have a voice, and I know that it's heard. And I think there's a lot of similarities in those meetings of the ability to throw out and know that I have a voice and it's being heard. And not every answer and not every solution has obviously ever came from me, but the mutual respect in the meeting. I think that's why we're a big part of why we're able to be somewhat the successful here in our district.
Coach, you alluded to as we started our conversation today on the legacy of your family and the impact and your opportunity to work with your father, not only in education, but on the athletic field. Reflecting back through time, I think some of the aspects that athletic leaders, individuals like Coach John Wooden, such as his pyramid of success, those values from more than 100 years ago, and those individuals who experience athletics as a player, as a coach, as a team member, as a manager, or in some other capacity, to have a great head start in many ways to become effective leaders. Talk about how your experiences as a team member, as whether it was as a coach, as a player, or whether it was specific with athletics or any other extracurricular, has played a part in your development.
I would definitely say that's more of a respect for all backgrounds, ability to relate. There's nothing greater than the locker room in athletics. Everyone working toward a common goal to complete that task, to get that win, to hold a team to a certain amount of points. Within that locker room, there's all walks of life, is what I've always remember my grandparents telling me and my dad. It didn't. When you're in the locker room, you're a family. It doesn't matter how much money or who has mom, dad, especially in public schools. I think being brought up in a public school and having the ability to work with all and respect for all and an understanding for all, that's, if I have any success, it starts with that, because giving employees a chance, giving a teammate a chance, giving your coworkers a chance, respecting all, and just listening and having an understanding. I think that's what it goes back to. I'm a public school former student athlete that learned a whole lot in that extended classroom after school, 3 to 5, with dealing with people. And that definitely would be where I think a big part of my background comes from, is seeing the influence that my parents and grandparents had when we're in restaurants and things, or at their funerals, and the stories of their influence. And when you go between the lines, they always told me it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you make. It doesn't matter how high you scored on the SAT. When you're in between the lines, you just compete, heck, and when it's over, you shake hands.
Coach, looking back to those days and the experiences you just referenced and being in the locker room and looking at where society's at today, have those experiences lost a bit from societal respect and the value society places on the opportunity for growth and development, you think?
I still think after school activities are amazingly, there's just so many opportunities now. Sure, there might be a little less on a football team, or not everybody's playing softball anymore, but my gosh, I know in the EVSC, they might be in the musical, and that's fine. Or they might be in dance, or they might be, I think, engagement. And obviously for me, athletics have been a huge, but it can be anything, whether it's your child's play or the musical or dance or band. There's a lot of opportunities out there. So I'm seeing that in a positive light, that we might have a little less on our softball team, but you know what, if that musical's going good and kids are around good role models, people that they need to be with, and they're learning and they're enjoying the talents that they have, that's okay with me. But I will be concerned. I will be concerned when there's not a softball and we don't have a lead in the play. I so greatly value extracurricular activities, and I don't just mean athletics by that. There's so much to be gained as far as understanding and working with others, again, towards a common goal, whether it's the win, whether it's the musical. Get involved. And for teachers, I think that's why you get into teaching too. Yeah, you love 7 to 2, but you loved your band experience, you loved your music experience, you loved leading the FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. There's so many things, again, for that influence and that relationships with students, that, again, that's an extended classroom to me. And any type of leadership I have within the EVSC, we're going to continue to offer those things for students and families.
Said, Coach, we have things like esports today that we didn't know what
Yeah.
E stood for back in the last century, right? In the
Right.
late 1900s in that piece. In fact, I think the only E I was familiar was those new era baseball hats that came out with, became the favorite at that point. Coach O, appreciate again your time, especially on your spring break here today. As we put a wrap on this segment, and for our viewers and listeners, Coach Owen's agreed to come back next week and continue our discussion. Coach, we've alluded a bit to Evansville Vandenberg School Corporation, Evansville, Indiana. But in our discussions and the friendship we've developed over the past several years, I know the city of Evansville is near and dear to your heart. As we wrap this episode, talk about the city itself and why it remains so close to you.
I've been so blessed in my life. It starts with family, and not everybody has what I was able to have. Two loving mother and father and grandparents on both sides that grew up and their experience were in this wonderful town. Anything and any opportunity I have to give back. Evansville's a great place. It just fits me and what I'm about and what my family's about. The population, the demographic, the diversity. That's what I want my kids to be a part of. And that's why I value public education here in Evansville. There's great schools all over, but I'm going to stand proud with the EVSC and this great city of Evansville.
What's maybe the one change you've seen over the past 3 or 4 decades related to the city? And by the way, for those of you maybe not familiar, the city of Evansville is located in the very southwest tip of the state of Indiana, kind of borders on Kentucky, Illinois, et cetera, with just a few miles either direction in that piece. Because what's one thing you've seen the city grow and become that maybe you're most proud of in your day?
I think opportunities and access and opportunities for all. The pickleball courts, I know that's a big thing because the Evansville heard that's what the community likes, and we were able to do something there. As simple as that. I think the Ford Center for bringing in events and things for people to do. I really think becoming more meaningful, the food, the housing, for those that are less fortunate. This great city will rally around those that are less fortunate. And there are a lot of here that are. And I think we need to be proactive instead of always help. Let's get them before they need the meals and those things. But I'm really proud of Evansville as one of the largest, but forward-thinking cities about how to take care of our own. And I think our students, you learn the content, but also learning about taking care of one another and your role in this great society and great world is just as important. Evansville, the opportunities are there, and we're trying to do things so that everyone has an opportunity to be successful.
Coach, thank you for sharing, and thank you the passion and the vulnerability and the love. It really speaks to who Coach and Dr. Andy Owen is and has been, and quite honestly, in my take, is exactly why you've had the success and experiences that you've had to become a significant individual, not only in the field of education for Evansville Vandenberg School Corporation, but the great city of Evansville. And I thank you so much again for your time. God bless you, my friend. I look forward to picking up our discussion next week.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. It was a lot of fun and to look back on some great things here. Thank you.
Thank you. And for Coach Owen, Dr. Owen, and myself, we appreciate you so much taking the time. And I hope you found something of value that you can take. And don't forget to tune in again next week. Coach Owen's going to be back, and we're going to talk more about his experiences in and out of education, on and off the athletic field, and as a father, and as a grandfather, as a husband. And hopefully you'll have something that you can take and put into your leadership toolbox. I know I picked up a number of things today. So for Coach Owen, I'm Kevin Smith. Remember, success doesn't always have to be in a rush. We can be still, move forward, and bring great value to self, most importantly, to others. Thank you for your time. God bless.